Ladies and gentlemen, you're all invited to go fucking mental on this motherfucking drop. The countdown has just begun. Are you ready? Let's go, 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 go. So we're back from the dead. We're back from the dead.
Hell yeah.
We're back from the dead. Are you ready? Let's go, 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 go.
Back from the dead.
We're back from the dead.
Hell yeah.
We're back from the dead. Back from the dead. Back from the dead.
Hey guys, what is up? Welcome back to the channel. It is yours truly, Krystal Leandra. Today I'm here with Elfie, and we're also going to be chatting about the Church of Satan. So this is a paranormal podcast for those of you that are brave enough to join the circle. It's going to be a really good chat today, kind of about theology, and we were in group chat earlier, chatting, all of us girls, and I love that we all have such different perspectives, and we go down these like deep rabbit holes. I don't know, this is it can be a touchy topic, okay? But I think it's important to understand why it's a touchy topic. And I also feel like there's not a lot of information out there on it. It's sort of like when I broke apart like what witchcraft is, and being a pagan and practicing paganism and like in the church of their own belief system. We're kind of going to do that again today. First though, let's just chat about the fact that there's some housekeeping stuff. One, I've been gone for a couple weeks. I've been busy. We have awesome things coming around. I know a lot of you have been wanting me to announce it. I can't talk about it right now. Another thing, I hope everybody out there, hope everybody enjoyed the museum chat, okay, that I did a couple of weeks ago. Elfie's laughing right now, okay. I hope that you enjoyed it, because it will be the last one probably ever. Like, there's a few reasons for it. So first of all, let's just briefly. I don't want to talk about this very long. Okay. Some of you were asking me how I know insider information at the museum. There's been people like trying to get people that work at the museum in trouble. There's no secret. People will literally tweet at me publicly. That's the secret. And it's more than one person that works at the museum, how I know like insider information. So people were trying to like get people in trouble and like, oh, I bet it's this person. And there was like conspiracies going around on Twitter that fans were tagging me on. No, it's not. There's no conspiracy here. It's just people. I know they supposedly sign NDAs at the museum. It doesn't work. I mean, I remember being on set with other executive producers that I've worked with in film, and they have a saying, and the saying goes, NDAs are, they're considered, they're like private forms you sign so that you don't give out information publicly. My old producers used to say, NDAs don't work unless you pay someone enough for them to work. And I feel like that's really accurate in this case. So stop trying to get people in trouble. I don't have a secret in there. It's literally fans that tweet at me and like talk to me publicly. Sometimes they'll even respond to me insider information on my Instagram page, and I'll delete it because I don't want them to get in trouble. Why will the haunted museum stream, or like, I guess it wasn't really a stream, it was like a critique, why will it be the last one? Apparently Zach got wind of it, and he was very mad about the things I said regarding the Hitler picture and the worker that I dealt with. And he has boloed me, according to the workers there. Bolo means be on the lookout, and I have been banned from the museum. I actually think it's hilarious, to be honest. Are my feelings hurt? No. I think it's, even Elfie's laughing, Kat thinks it's hilarious. There's a mixed group of people coming at me to tell me this. There's partial people that work there that like hate my guts, and they're probably friends with the girl I dealt with, and so they're happy that I've been banned. And there's another half of people that like are upset that I've been banned because they don't understand. Like, I've critiqued his stuff before, including Ghost Adventures. Why did this time set him over the edge? I don't know. Once again, I have not been in communication with him in years, but I do find it funny in a sense that people have accused me for years since I've been on YouTube that Zach has been paying me, or Ghost Adventures has been paying me for reviews. And I feel like this is one way to prove I was never paid. I was never paid by them to do, like, it's always made me so mad. My feminist comes out. Why does Zach get credit for all the work I've done on YouTube? He didn't do any of that. He didn't pay me. He didn't edit me or edit my videos. He didn't do any of that stuff. So I think it's hilarious he banned me. I don't care. Whatever floats his boat. Clearly he can't take criticism at this point in the game. I did not critique him as a person, and I did not critique his personal relationships. I only critiqued the museum. So I don't think I was wrong, and I'm assuming I'm not the only critic out there that would critique things the way I did. Also, like, you know, having concerns, like I said before, that the museum's not handicap accessible. I've been banned. I don't care. Whatever, you know, makes him feel better and sleep better at night if I can't come down there to critique the things that he's done. So, that's it. I don't know. Yeah, it's weird. It makes no sense. I don't know why. And on that note, I'm going to bring in Elfie because it was pretty funny when we found this out. And I'm over it. I don't care. I have no hard feelings. It's just whatever floats your boat. You know what I mean? And on that note, I feel like the Church of Satan is just waiting for us. You know what I mean? So, hi, Elfie. How are you?
Doing good. How you doing?
Yay, I'm good. This is a good topic that can make us kind of go down like a dark rabbit hole. Mm-hmm. And I think that a lot of people have a misunderstanding when it comes to the Church of Satan. I feel like the way to start out this conversation is, in every religion, there is like an antagonist and a protagonist, where like one side is good and one side is bad. And that's a perfect example when we're sharing it with even like Catholicism or even Christianity, right? Like you have like the people that like follow and study the scripture on the Catholic side, and they love it and they are devoted to their life to God and everything involved. But then you have all of these other things that come out, under the woodwork of like the priests doing things to little boys, and they've been scooping that under the rug. So I feel like that's how it is in every religion, even with like witchcraft. You have witchcraft that's like white magic, good magic, gray magic is kind of in between, and then you have the dark magic. So on all sides of religion, there is good and bad, and that's the same with the Church of Satan. And I feel like the publicized image of the Church of Satan, people aren't wanting to understand it because they're scared of the name Satan.
Yeah. Well, also you have to look too, like a lot of religions, it's not even so much always like a good evil. It's more like a balance of dark and light. That there has to be a balancing, and even in the early Catholicism, you saw this, and then you have the Church of Satan, where I think it's one of those, how much of it's been theatrics and people not like realizing, don't take it so seriously, and then you have the people who are just using it as scare tactics.
Mm-hmm. Well, and I do think that just the name Satan can like be off-putting, and like I think I blame Hollywood for that more than anybody. They've scared people. Hollywood. It is. I always blame Hollywood for it, literally. It's pretty bad since I'm a producer in it, but like it is.
Supernatural, just blame Hollywood.
Yeah, they'll just blame Hollywood for everything. So I was even interested. Now, before we get too deep in this, one question I have for you. So looking at like the Church of Satan, it was founded by Anton LaVey back in like the was it the 30s or 50s or somewhere in there?
1960.
Okay, that's right. It was the hippie age, the hippie era.
It was the free love to begin with.
Right. So do you think that from what the Church of Satan was when Anton LaVey was around versus sort of what it's morphed into, don't you think it's kind of changed a little bit over time since the 60s?
I think in some ways, like, it's now granted, it's been a while since you've seen like it in the news, but it's like if you look at when it first started, he was in the media all the time. He was in press releases, he was doing interviews, he was very much in the public eye. And it feels like as times change and as more modern day, it's kind of like a little more restrained. Like you'll see them every once in a while hop on CNN or something if they have to make comment or make a statement, if the news even hints at the possibility of a Satanist or satanic or anything, and they have to be like, no, that's not us, this is not what we do. Mm-hmm. And that's about it.
And that was like back in the day, but now you've stepped into an era, like we both kind of researched different sides of this, because I love what you like picked up on it. You have just sort of like the facts of like what happened, what it is. But then I wanted to pull in the sort of pop culture side that I feel a lot of people haven't like seen like in the media. And the Church of Satan has actually stepped in for a lot of like LGBT rights and women like female rights, because they fight the state essentially with constitutional rights stating, you're forcing me to do something or a belief under the name of God or Christianity. But what if I don't believe in your God? And they've actually won a ton of litigations using that rhetoric, which blows me away because, I mean, obviously they're doing it for their own belief system, being atheists. But in the same sense, it's like they're really standing up for just like equality rights.
Well, yeah, with the Satanic Temple, it's like it's very interesting where they're fighting and basically pushing against, where they show, okay, we're supposed to be a country that is freedom of religion, any religion. And so when you have places where they, like you said, they hinder other people's belief, or they push a Ten Commandments statue, or who gets to do the opening prayers for legal things and everything, if they don't allow them to also be able to do that, then that's saying, well, you're now saying it's freedom of religion to a point. Mm-hmm. Our religion, but not yours.
And it's interesting, because I didn't realize, I literally went through articles and articles of litigation that they're still involved with right now. So before we get too deep in this conversation, I want to talk about the two sides of it so that people are open-minded to listening, okay? So the first thing you're going to think of is like, sacrifices, bloodletting, drinking blood, killing animals and humans. Okay, so that's the first thing people think of. That's not necessarily the side we're talking about today. And it's just like Elfie said, there's a light side and a dark side to everything. That's completely accurate. I definitely don't support the dark side, and I feel like I was researching it a little bit, so I was a little bit more up on, being able to communicate about it. I don't really like the people that are self-claimed Satanists that do the dark stuff like sacrifices and stuff, because I don't really think that's Satanism. I think that's more of like devil worship. I even looked into like Luciferianism. I have stuff written down about that, and it's not even it's not even really Luciferianism. You know what I mean? Like, so I think that we need to first of all pick it apart, and like there's different branches here. So the sacrifice and stuff, yeah, I agree. I don't agree with it, although I think they're taking it from different cultures. Like old cultures used to do sacrifices. I mean, even Kat and I were talking earlier saying like in Catholicism, you're drinking wine as the blood of Jesus. Like that's a freaking sacrifice in its own. Like, you know what I mean? Like, but people don't think of it that way because, it's under the name of God, so it's safe.
Yeah.
So, which is like, no, it's still a sacrifice. You're still drinking human blood here. Like, let's calm down.
There's a difference between a sacrifice, because there are cultures that still do animal sacrifices, but there's a difference between the animal sacrifice you hear about our cultures do, where it is for a purpose and is also for food and blessings, and then you hear about these things where it's not. This is being cruel and a horrible a cruel act.
Exactly. That's a perfect way to put it. Of people and cultures to this day around the world still do sacrificial things, not necessarily human. I mean, maybe in the deep jungles of places we don't know about. But there are still like animal sacrifices that happen in a religious sense. But what we're talking about is the people that are doing them in a cruel, torturing manner who enjoy the cruelty out of it. That part I don't agree with, because I do think it's a shock value when people do like torturing of animals or humans, whatever. I don't agree with it at all, because you guys know I'm like a huge animal activist and child advocate. Like, I don't think innocent children and animals should ever be harmed in any way. But I think they hide behind the word Satanism in a way to shock people. I think they like the shock factor in a lot of ways. And I think they use it as the shock factor. And I was looking through it, like there were people coming out saying, oh yeah, I do, satanic acts of like sacrifices. But in the articles, people are like, but why? And they like never have an answer why. And that's when you look into cultural like sacrifices, and it is usually like to give to the gods or whatever. It's not because you're like sacrificing it for the devil.
Well, I've heard of some that they'll do sacrifices of their own blood, where they'll do blood sacrifices where it's their own blood and fluids and stuff, and not someone else's. And so it's like, well, that's you do your own thing. It's when you cross the line, when you're, like you said, harming or being cruel to animals, or being cruel to people and being unconsenting and everything. That's the line cross. If you want to sacrifice your own blood and rituals, that's fine. That's you. You do you, boo. You do you, boo.
But now getting that mixed up with the Church of Satan is not the same thing. Because I was literally reading excerpts from the Church of Satan, and including Luciferianism, but we're not going to get into that today. But essentially they say, like, if you're looking for, like, the Illuminati, or you're looking for, like, sacrificial stuff, or you're looking for bloodletting or, like, blood exchange, you've come to the wrong place. And, like, not that I'm trying to stand up for the Church of Satan by any means, but it's been taught incorrectly, like, due to, like, public service and, like, ideologies, not only through Hollywood, but through the media. And I do feel like if they're doing good, and the Church of Satan is, quote, like the good guys in some ways, because they are standing up for like equality and amendment rights, somebody needs to come in and say, wait a second, just because their name is the Church of Satan doesn't mean that they do the dark things that everybody automatically goes to in their mind. So do you have like a total definition of what you would say like the Church of Satan actually is?
Well, from what I've read about, because you have the Church of Satan, you have the Satanic, and I think that's the other problem we've come across, is that there's so many. You have the main one that we think about that was formed in the 60s, but then you have all these like these other like little offshoot branches that are some are connected, some are not. So it's one of those, and then unfortunately they always get lumped into Satanists. But the initial like Church of Satan formed in the 1960s, their tenets usually just are the idea they don't believe in a literal Satan. They follow the archetype or the imagery of Satan as the questioner, as the rebellious one, and they are atheists, so they don't believe in a literal deity. They believe that if you are just here on earth and this is your only time, you should be able to live it to your fullest. You shouldn't be afraid and worry about sin or it's basically us also, as long as you're not harming other people, as long as you're just doing your thing but not doing harm to other people, that's fine. The only time you see it slightly different is when it says if someone gets in your way and you tell them stop or like stop doing that and they don't, then you are allowed to like make them stop. But other than that, they don't, even the book itself, they don't condone, like it said, harming people, harming animals. It's one of those, it's like you are responsible for your actions, because at the end of the day there is no higher being to judge you. You are judging yourself.
Right. Generally do good, be good is essentially. So I have a really good quote that I found from an expert, from someone writing about the Church of Satan. And they said the church preaches both empathy and the freedom to offend, which I thought was really interesting. So basically, it's you do what you want, live your life the way you want to without any limitations. However, be a decently good human being and don't do bad. They don't really say what happens, but just don't be a part of our church if you're going to do bad or do harm.
Yeah, and honestly, that kind of also falls within the consequence idea. It's like, yeah, you can do whatever you want, but also understand that there will be consequences to your actions too, and you can't be like, whoops, didn't know.
Right. And it's crazy because it's such a like polar opposites when you have this Church of Satan saying, oh, just don't do bad, but yet people automatically lump them into like doing like the worst possible thing, which is like taking human and animal life. And that's where it's shocking that people don't know the difference. And it is sad for people that can't come out and just be honest, be like, yeah, I'm part of the Church of Satan, which, by the way, researching it, I found that there's literally hundreds of thousands of members just in the United States. So I've known people that are part of the Church of Satan. And was it scary? No, they're just very much like, I just do my own thing. Like, it's kind of like the anti like in crowd. Like, I don't want to, right? Like, I don't want to be a part of the in crowd, so I'm going to do like the complete opposite. So once again, is the shock value partially involved? Yeah, for sure. But I don't think it's meant to be like, I sacrifice people and animals. Like, that's not, when you're part of this actual community, that's not what they're about. But it's so sad that, like, just because the name is involved from, like, pop culture, it has demonized them so badly. But in a way, I think they like it because they're still, like, the anti. Like, they still want to be the opposite. They still want to be, like, the outcast.
No, I mean, they still want, they push the limits, they question things. They're not, they are about questioning. You question everything. And that's the actual thing I find interesting. Is a lot of people that I know who are members or connected in some way, it's usually like these are usually very intelligent people, that these are artists and philosophers.
Yes.
And people with that, I think that's what freaked a lot of people out there with the whole satanic panic thing, was the idea of like, oh my God, it could be someone who does a 9-to-5 job, looks normal, but like they could be Satanists. And it just freaks them out because what everyone was expecting was all Satanists are all dressed in black and all goth, and they're like very huge pentagrams and everything, very clear signs. And
clear signs? I like how you
very
said.
clear signs of like, that's a Satanist. And when it could be simply as someone in a suit going to work, and then that could also be a Satanist too, and I think that's what freaked people out even more.
Right. Well, with that too being said, going back to me saying like in the 60s when Anton LaVey was like a big part of it, he has done like rituals of like summonings or whatever. I'm not saying they don't still do that, but in my opinion, from what I've read, it's not as predominant as it used to be when Anton LaVey was sort of involved.
Oh, he loved that stuff. I
Yeah.
mean, like looking at it and look at the I saw some of the videos of his interviews and watching the posts, and like he had like the baptism of his one kid like 4 times and everything. And honestly, like look at this, like, dude, I would have loved just to go hang out at that house and
Of
like
course
talk to
you
him
would,
and
Elfie.
take lectures because like, he was such a showman. Like I found the perfect quote where it said like P.T. Barnum had a circus tent and LaVey had a black house where he kept a pet lion and performed rituals. I mean, he was a showman.
Right.
And I think that's one of the big differences we probably see today. Like with the Church of Satan, it's not quite as showy because Anton LaVey's no longer around.
Mhm.
But the Satanic Temple is a little more showy because they know if they keep being in the public eye, then people have to take notice of them.
Well, I also think too, with him being involved, he I mean, obviously he liked that, but I think people went to just watch him. You know what I mean? Like they were a part of the Church of Satan, not because they cared. It was just because they wanted to say like, oh yeah, I got to go watch him like perform this spell or like do this thing or like, and so I think that would have been an interesting time to be alive for sure.
Oh, yeah. They're probably like, what's he going to do next?
But I don't think that's something they practice anymore. I think that was definitely something when he was around. There was some weird thing that happened with his daughter. Did you read about that? Like she was going to take over the Church of Satan and then she like backed out again in like, I think the 90s or something like that.
Oh, are you talking about Xena?
Yes.
Yeah, Xena, who ends up, I think she went with the temple set and everything. And yeah, I think she was supposed to kind of take over him because she was very much involved in her youth and everything, and then she went different direction.
The opposite way. It sounds like she kind of like turned to like.
Now apparently into Buddhism. She's not like a Buddhist monk, or she's in Europe and she practiced Buddhism.
Yeah, I know that's like, whoa, that was a little flip, but it's fine. You know what I mean? Like especially when your dad was like summoning in demons and stuff. It's fine. You know, maybe that would affect your childhood a little bit. You know, she's like, I gotta get out of here. But so it is interesting. I agree. I'm gonna be honest. Like watching videos of like Anton LaVey, I don't see him as like a pastor of like a church. You know what I mean? Like it was literally like he was on stage. Like I would have wanted to go just to watch him. Literally, you know.
He was odd.
He was very odd.
Well, I mean, this is why I always find weird or find funny when people like they were freaking out about this guy, and it's like, do you not see the humor in this? Because if you looked at him, he dressed and presented himself in the most classic devil possible. I mean, he shaved his head and he had the goatee and he had the arch brows and he had the black suit and the devil stuff ring and everything. He was the most epitome of what we thought of the devil in a more classic sense or artistic sense and everything. And it's one of those like, could you not see the humor in this? Like, like, can you not see that he's like kind of laughing at you when you're going, oh my God, it's the devil? And it's like,
well, that was proof that he also wanted the shock value. You know what I mean?
Oh, yeah.
Like, and that was probably proof too of like people back then in the 60s, imagine in the media seeing all these things coming out about Anton LaVey and the quote Church of Satan that he's recreated. And everyone's like, oh my God, like he thinks he's Satan in the flesh, like he's summoning demons. And at that time, you'd believe it. You know what I mean? So then that's, bam, the fear starts. And like that's even before Hollywood gets involved. And it's become like a thing. But for him, it's like a good way because he's looking for the outcast. And yes, he's a performer. So he's looking for people to be sort of a part of that. I don't really think he was as scary as he presented himself to be, though.
He was one, it was interesting when, like, visually he looked very much like, pay attention to me, look at me and everything. But when you hear him talk, like he was actually pretty quiet. Like he was very direct about his answers and everything. Because I mean, if you hear some of the questions the news people are asking him, they're the most ridiculous questions. They're the usual, like, do you sacrifice babies?
Yeah, right.
Do you do you hold
like you're gonna admit that anyway on screen? Even if you do, like you're like, yes, I do all the time, you know.
And he just look at them like, really? You're asking me this? Okay.
Well, and I mean, honestly, I think he's also an opportunist in a way because it's sort of like, I mean, I don't want to compare him to Ron L. Hubbard because that's a little bit different with Scientology, and I think it's really horrific what Scientologists go through because I've seen all the documentaries on it. But same thing in a sense of they see an opportunity of a religion that is lacking, and you can make it a nonprofit. Like let's just be honest. Any business that you do, including a church, you're gonna make money off of it. And he was an opportunist. Like he saw that, and I mean, I'm not gonna say he was dumb because he made a lot of money doing it. You know, not saying
he held lectures, and then someone was like, "Hey, maybe you should charge some money since more people want to hear." It's like, "Sure, we'll charge," and then it like went from there.
Well, and honestly, like I can't complain about some of the things I've seen with them being involved in like current affairs, because they have done some really amazing things. One of the, and we'll get more into like, Elfie's got this freaking fact list that's just amazing. But like one of the things that really stood out to me when I was researching the side of it for like pop culture, I love to play devil's advocate, you know, I always like to stay in the middle and like look at both sides of things. But one of the most current cases that the Church of Satan did was, I think it was New York, don't quote me on that, but there was a gay couple. I'm not sure if it was a lesbian couple or men, but it was a gay couple, and they went to a bakery and tried to get a cake baked. And they denied their cake for their wedding because they said that due to religious Christianity purposes they couldn't do it. And so the Church of Satan went in and said, "We're having an event and I would like a cake to be made for the Church of Satan." They thought they were joking and made the cake.
Oh my.
But they still made it the way it was requested. And so what the Church of Satan did was they went back to court and said, why was this gay couple denied, but yet if it's in the name of religion, yet they made us a cake in the name of the Satan Church, and they won the case. So they're trying to like teach lessons as well, you know what I mean, like to people. And I just thought that was like, whoa. So I was reading, one of the lawyers did like an interview, and one of the lawyers was like, you know, everything we hear about inequality, whether it's with women or LGBT or just using like the Christianity like card for denying people like their rights or constitutional issues, he goes, they're all using in the name of God, in the name of Christianity. So what we wanted to do as the Church of Satan, and like legality wise, we went in and used the Christianity tactics against them. And that like blew my mind. You know, I was like, whoa, like to even think that you could, you know what I mean? Like, in other words, the Church of Satan says, okay, you're going to like force me to abide by these laws that are technically unconstitutional due to like religious preference. Yet we don't believe in your God. So how can I follow your request or your law? Because your God doesn't exist to me. And I mean, I don't think at the beginning, it is. And in the beginning, I think they were just looking out for themselves, because I went back to like old litigations. It really hasn't started picking up till like the last 5 to 10 years where they've really gotten involved with like legal stuff. But then I think they realized, okay, we're setting boundaries for everybody who doesn't have the same like quote beliefs or God. And I think they realized it was like a bigger thing, and they've won a ton of cases in all of the states across the United States. And I was just blown away, because I was like, wait a second, why? That was where the topic of this stream came up. Is like, why are people not talking about this? Why is the Church of Satan like in such a shock form that people aren't going to talk about like the actual good that they have done for like the communities out there that need a voice? And having like the church to back you to like have that like legality of like, oh, we don't believe in your God. So that was really like the core behind why I wanted to do this stream, because there's the misconceptions just because of the term Satan. Like, it needs to be like distinguished, right? I told Elfie this stream and she was like, oh my God, I want to do the Church of Satan. Okay, so let's chat about your like fact sheet, which is like freaking amazing. So to be oddly specific, the Church of Satan was founded April 30th of 1996. How did we do that by accident? We're like 15 days early for its anniversary.
Oh yeah, we're like pretty close, and it's like they even apparently had it land on like a particular like European holiday dealing with witches and everything, and it's Yeah, so you had the Church of Satan founded in 1966 in San Francisco, California, and we have like, unfortunately, it's no longer around, but you have Anton LaVey's house, which was the first Church of Satan headquarters, which was called the Black House, which apparently was like a turn of the century San Francisco house that he painted from beige to black. And there's like pictures you'll see, like pretty house, black, all black house, pretty house.
Do you know why it was it demolished, or like what happened?
Yeah, unfortunately, apparently, what happened was, let's see, the famous Black House was like LaVey lived in the house until his death in '97. He actually lost ownership of it in the early '90s, but he was allowed to stay in the house. And then at some point, actually, they repainted the house from black to beige to kind of try to like tone down on all the people coming around to see the house and everything, because it's one of those like you can't really miss it.
A tourist attraction too, of people like flocking.
Yeah,
right?
because it's like it's the Satanist house, so
it's the Satanist house. I mean, look, my house is gonna be black someday, and I'm no Satanist. Okay, so I'm just saying, like.
So he lost ownership of it, but he was allowed to stay in the house. And then when LaVey passed away, the Church of Satan did try to repurchase the house, but they were unsuccessful with it, and then it got torn down in 2001.
Must have been because like it was attracting people or something like that, even years later.
Yeah, also if you look at the pictures too, it was looking a little on the rundown side, and a lot of the area around it was really being built up and everything, so they're like, let's just flatten this out.
Let's just get rid of it. Let's just destroy the Satanist house. Yeah, and how cliche to have a black house. Like, wow, like one easy way for... I need an easy way to find my church members to find my house, so let's paint it black. Wow. And I mean, it probably was dark, though. I can only imagine if he did summon things in and do rituals, like, who knows what happened in there anyway. So it's probably for the best, honestly. And if there was, like...
I don't know, a whole bunch of different stuff happened in there.
There's probably, like, a UPS that was, like, built on top of it, or, like, a mail, like, USPS that's, like, why is it so haunted? Like, why does this mail go missing all the time? You know what I mean? It's like, well, where do we start, okay? The demons got summoned in.
There might be a satanic portal in your basement. Don't mind us.
So I did see another joke online, because I'm reading your notes, and it talks about having black mass, which is the opposite of like mass with, you know, holy mass with Catholicism and whatever. Online, one of the articles I was reading, that there was like a questionnaire that a Satanist had come forward, and they were like asking questions, and the Q&A was like, so do you sacrifice, you know, babies and children? And the Satanist's like, no. And then they're like, do you sacrifice like pregnant women? And the Satanist's like, again, no. And then they're like, do you do sacrificial like animals? Like, there's just, like, to be clear, there's like no bloodletting, like, so we can just get off these questions, like there's no. And then
we move on to something else here.
Literally. But then what made me laugh in the article is like the next question is like, okay, so, you know, since those extremes didn't happen, did you have, you know, a black mass? Is that true? And the Satanist's like, yeah, I mean, yeah, those happened for sure. Like, which is just, once again, it's like the shock value of, like, you know, like they're just being honest. It's just the way that they are doing their, I don't want to say prayer, because they don't pray, you know what I mean? But it's like,
it's a performance. It was honestly like what a lot of it, when you see, especially when you see the videos of it, it's like obviously they were upping it for performance, because you have the altar, you have the woman, usually someone on the altar, and you have everyone in robes, and it's just like one of those, like, this is probably not your usual Saturday night mass.
This is theatrical. It's still more
theatrical.
It is, and I think it's supposed to be, because in a way, in my opinion, they're sort of making fun of organized religion by being like the complete opposite of like what organized religion is supposed to be. And I mean, I respect it, but I do find humor in it, because it is like, what's another shocking way? Once again, the Church of Satan's pretty shocking. What's your statue? Baphomet. Okay, also shocking.
Oh, yeah.
How do you do like your prayer or performance? A black mass. Like let's just do like the most shocking opposite things. No, we don't have a Jesus statue. We have a Baphomet statue. You know what I mean?
We have the horn guy, and then I think what threw people off more was when they did. It wasn't only just Baphomet, but now you have like 2 kids, and it was,
Yeah, there's like
starting
kid
to look
like
a little more like Santa moment there.
it is. Well, and then apparently there was another article I was reading that made me laugh. There was a bunch of controversy that happened. I guess this conversation isn't for people that don't have a sense of humor in a way, you know what I mean? Because like they're wanting to be like the anti-religious group, you know, which is what they are. But there was another article I was reading, and it was, the Confederate, all the Confederate statues are coming down, right, from like the South and the East. And there were some lawmakers that came forward that were like, okay, well, if we're taking down the Confederate, statues that represent our history, then I want all of the Baphomet statues removed from public land. And the Church of Satan had to release a statement that said the only Baphomet statues that exist are on private property for the Church of Satan. So no, they will not be removed because it's not like in public parks like some of the Confederate, and I was kind of laughing because like, why did they even have to respond? Like, so that tells you people are lacking information on the Church of Satan like so badly, you know what I mean?
Because I think that statue, which is a pretty cool looking statue that they were trying to
Elfie, it's a pretty cool looking statue.
It's a really nice statue too if you look at it, because like, I mean, we'll probably talk later about that lawsuit and everything, but yeah, it's right now in Salem, Massachusetts at the Satanic
Oh, is this
like,
the one that they're moving around the United States for people to see? Okay, yeah. Well,
and
no.
It's one of those like, I want to see some place actually go like, yeah, we'll put that up. I want to see that happen.
Yeah, you know what? In Vegas, we have this really great waterfall in front of the Bellagio, and I think it'd be a great spot. Just bring it on down. You know what I mean? Like, there's tons of tourists. Let's do some selfies. Let's leave it there.
I want to see it like where, you do the weddings and everything, the Elvis weddings. I want to see it like when you walk in, that's the first thing you see before you do the wedding.
Right outside to do selfies with Baphomet, and there's like 2 kids next to Baphomet. Like, Jesus. No, it is comical because they don't want, I don't think they really want it to be taken totally serious, because once again, they want you to live your life and they want you to be happy and like free will, free spirited, not be held down by.
I mean, in the interview, the guy even said, like, we don't want you to take down the 10 Commandments. We just, like, if you're going to have the 10 Commandments and it's supposed to be freedom of religion, we should be also allowed to have our representation here, too, at the same time. Because they were claiming, like, oh, no, it's not religious. It's totally just because it was, like, the old laws and everything. It's like, no, that's a totally religious item that you're putting on the front lawn. So they're like, we don't want to take it down. We just also want to put our statue here if you're claiming this is not religious. Right.
Which makes sense. Like, they're using their own words against them. And I mean, like I said, I was researching it, and these lawyers are smart. I mean, they are literally using their own words against them. Like, if you're not claiming Christianity yet you are, then we, not just me as the Church of Satan, but everybody who has a different belief system should also be able to do something publicly similar.
Oh yeah.
Or not at all. And that's how they have won. It's interesting though, because they've also said that a lot of judges are scared to rule for the Church of Satan because they're afraid people are going to think they're Satanists. I'm like, I think you're a little off. It's a little extreme.
Well, I mean, they've even fought against like prayer in school, because they're like, well, if you're going to allow prayer in school, then we should be allowed to do. I think it was like after school Satanist club stuff and everything. Is like, well, if you're allowing this, we should be allowed to do this.
Yeah, I did like, read about that. There was like predominant areas, I think, particularly, like, I know this is weird and it's not going to make sense to me either, but Salem obviously has a predominant population of Satanists, but that's obviously, I'm not shocked by that with just Salem's, the magic and all that stuff. But Texas apparently has a big congregation. And I was like, whoa, like that's all the people that like decided they didn't like Ted Cruz anymore. They were like, I'm going to the Church of Satan now. But they're like pissed he went on vacation, you know, during the Blizzardzilla.
Oh,
But
that thing.
it's just really interesting because like, and it sucks that people don't like educate themselves, because I think in a way people are also scared to educate themselves on the Church of Satan, because once again, oh, if I research the Church of Satan, like I'm bringing it towards me, like I'm bringing the devil towards me.
Well, yeah, like even just reading the Satanic Bible itself, it's like, oh my goodness, if I read this, I'll like call on the devil or something. It's like, no, you won't. You're fine. You're good.
No, you're good. I think you're fine. I will say, though, that, like, because I've known what the Church of Satan stands for quite a while. I've never dug this deep into it like we did over this last week. But it is funny because I have a lot of people once in a while that will DM me. Like, they run across the podcast or whatever, and they're like, oh, you're going to hell. You know, you're just one of those Satanists that's out there, and you're just preaching all the Satanism all around here, and you need to find yourself, God and Jesus, and somebody needs to slap you with the Bible. You know, I've had people say that to me, and I'm just like, well, if you're talking about your religion versus a Satanist, at this point, I'd rather be a Satanist, you know what I mean? Like,
because a little harsh here.
I don't like any religion that puts fear in you. You know, like, it doesn't matter what the religion is. I don't like any, and I have met those Satanists too that like instill fear in you, and I definitely don't like those Satanists. You know what I mean? But I also know the difference. Like, when you say you're a Satanist, like, what kind? Tell me what kind. You know what I mean? Like, like, you're not scaring me here. And I feel bad because if people don't understand that there's a lot of people that just like the shock value for it. Like, you create misinformation that's spread, which clearly has been done, obviously.
Yeah, I mean, there's always that whole idea of, like, you have kids that go through the phase where they're trying to find themselves and everything. You do get the ones that are like, they become Satanists, or they call themselves Satanists to freak everyone out and freak out their parents and everything. And eventually they'll either like go find something else, or they continue. But it's one of those, like, are you trying to just be scary, freaky, or are you actually serious about this because you're not really impressing me?
I did that as a kid, though. Like, in my book, I talk about one of my best friends, Derek, that died, and I was in 7th grade, and it really messed me up because he committed suicide. And I went through a phase because I'd gotten so depressed and dark that I was like, I don't know, I'm maybe agnostic, maybe atheist, maybe both. Like, I just don't care. Nothing else exists beyond this, because I got so like dark. But then I started getting visitations from Derek, and I was like, oh, boo-boo, there's something that exists out there, okay? Like, you start getting those experiences, like, never mind, sorry, reverse, you know what I mean? But you're right, it was me being a rebellious kid, like, wanting, like, I don't even think my friends knew what, like, an agnostic or an atheist was. They were like, okay, Krystal's that, like, whatever, we don't care, you know what I mean? So I do agree with that, I do. Okay, is there anything else you want to touch on here with your chat?
Here. Well, I just had we have the usual famous people like Marilyn Manson, Jane Mansfield, Kenneth Anger, were all people who were claimed to be either part of the Church of Satan or Satanists of some kind. The famous one, of course, is like one of the famous ones other than Manson is Jane Mansfield, and that was just because she was also a Hollywood actress, and she knew Anton LaVey and everything, and unfortunately her death could probably contribute to like the making it a bigger stigma and everything.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Marilyn Manson's, he's always been all about it, but once again, he likes the shock value. Been,
like, a lot of, and with the recent stuff, it just does not.
But see, that's what gives it a bad name again. You know what I mean? Like, and if you guys don't know,
like, that's not Church of Satan. That's him. That's like
exactly
his stuff.
So if you guys don't know, Marilyn Manson recently has been accused from his exes from basically like holding them captive and raping them like over and over again. And like there's like all these like allegations going on. Obviously I wasn't there. I don't know what happened. I always believe women who say that they're a victim of a crime like that, because that takes a lot to come forward. But then if he says he's a Satanist, you're like, oh, You associate it immediately. Oh, all Satanists.
Yeah.
That's exactly why we stay away from the Church of Satan, Sally, is because you're going to turn into a rapist and you're going to become Marilyn Manson. And it's like, wait a second. No, that's just because he's like a really shitty person. You know what I mean? Like, it has nothing to do with, like, same with if you're mutilating and torturing innocent beings and it's not because of your cultural belief, like in another place in the world. No, you're just like a shitty person. Like, don't hide behind the name Satanism. Don't make people that are like in the Church of Satan look bad. You're just a shitty person. Let's not hide behind the fact that you just enjoy torturing things. You know what I mean?
Oh yeah, and
Misconception.
it hasn't helped the Church of Satan, and especially hasn't helped, like, everyone saw the whole BDSM stuff and they're like, oh my god, that's what it is. And like,
Same
no,
thing.
that's not what it is.
Same thing.
That's not how it is.
Same thing. You know, people see the BDSM thing. See, you're gonna like go to the devil. You're gonna go to the dark side. What? Like, they don't have sex parties and like orgy. Well, you've seen way too many movies. Just time out for a second here. You know, I'm not saying that stuff doesn't exist, but what I'm trying to distinguish with Elfie is, I really think the darker stuff is like actual just devil worship, and like they're just hiding behind the name Satanism to sort of like make it look shocking, but it's also just hiding behind just being a shitty person, like we said.
Well, yeah, they want. Well, the problem is they want to lump everyone in together, and it comes to also, like, they rather tack it on to a title as being the problem, when it's like, no, it's the person. The person is the problem there. And I mean, you were talking about earlier, like, there's people in the church, in like the
Catholicism, absolutely.
Catholic church, that have been found out to be horrible people.
I like how you paused. Horrible people, okay?
And what's even worse is that, like, the church had like shuffled them around, and it's like, oh, you just made it even more worse when they're like being shuffled around. Be like, oh, we just made them go away.
It was even worse than that. They were when they found out there was like pedophilia going on in the Catholic Church. They weren't reporting it to the authorities that they were dealing with it internally, and the police went in and found files and files and files of pedophilia that had been happening, that the church had been hiding, saying, you can't go to the outside source, we have to deal with it internally, which is so wrong. And it's just, once again, don't hide behind Catholicism. You're just a shitty person. Don't
hide behind any religious organization. I mean, even like in the pagan community, there has been stories, especially with the whole Me Too movement. There's been stories that have been coming out of leaders who people have reported saying these people have done bad things, and they hide behind their titles, and they hide behind the title of elder. So it's one of those, like, don't use your religion as a buffer to try to justify you being an asshole, basically.
I agree. And that's where misconceptions come into, with having all the different branches of witchcraft. And instead of identifying as like a dark witch, or, you know, a hexing witch, blood witch, whatever you want to call it, they just say the term witch, which is what's made society be like, oh, you tell me you're a witch? Oh, you automatically are doing all the same stuff the Satanists are. And it's sad, because those are rare. That's a rare case. That's a real rare case. And it does need to be distinguished. But we've had a fear in society, whether you're religious or not, you still have that thing in the back of your head saying, like, God says Satan's bad. God says all of these things are bad. Therefore, I can't learn about witchcraft because it's paganism. Like, I was on the phone with Kat earlier. You know, she was like really heavily involved with the Catholic Church. She grew up Catholic. We've talked about that before. And she was actually at a point where she was teaching Sunday school. And she said, like, you have to get to a certain point where you've learned, you know, your theology enough where they will allow you to even teach it. And she said one of the things she used to hate that made her uncomfortable was how much they knocked paganism constantly. And she's like, honestly, looking back, they didn't even know what they were talking about, because there's a distinct difference between paganism and witchcraft too. And all they wanted to do is talk about how bad paganism is, and that you're going to go to hell, and like that's all they keep repeating. And she's like, instead they should be teaching, like, what do you want us to follow? Like, what kind of scripture, what path should we follow to be in the eyes of God? Instead it's like fear based, and we as a collective society have learned the fear based. It's like the natural thing we go to in your mind, which is you hear the word witch or Satan and bam, it's like, it's bad automatically. I'm not even going to look into it, I just know it's bad. And that's hard to unfuck. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Oh yeah, for sure. I mean, and the problem is, it's like I understand that you have there. Sometimes there's only so much time you can convey information in quick sound bites, and you sometimes might have to distill it into something um easy to understand. But even then, it's like there's so much. It's like just the tip of the iceberg to all everything else underneath it and everything.
Hmm.
And that is like, how long do you have for
Right,
us
you're
to
like,
talk about this?
especially with Elfie, never ask her one question and don't expect
Oh
it to be
god.
multifaceted because she's gonna be like, wait, where do we start? I need to let me tell you about the paperwork on this, okay? Let me tell you how. But that's true with all belief systems. It
Hmm.
can branch off into several different directions,
Oh
and
yeah.
it's clumped together. But I guess the crazy part to me is, like, as a society, we see anything as Satanist as bad, right?
Mhm.
It doesn't matter what it is, even if it's what we're talking about, which has nothing to do with death or bloodletting. Nothing. Absolutely nothing. Not
Oh
even
yeah.
close. But it's still bad.
And and then I've even seen the press releases where you see the videos of the representatives both of the Church of Satan and the Satanic Temple, and you'll see them on the news and everything, and they'll be dressed very nicely and clean cut and everything,
She's getting
and
emotional.
yeah, and it doesn't matter how well spoken they are, how clean cut they are, how well dressed they are. All people say is they see the title Satanist below it, or like Cardinal of Church of Satan, and it's like everything else just kind of gets
Went out the window.
forgotten
Yeah, it doesn't
to
matter how much
to the
money
person.
we've donated or helped the communities. It doesn't matter. That's all. But then, okay, on the flip side, because I love to play devil's advocate, it's my favorite place to be. It is, because I love looking at all sides of it. But
Hmm.
then you look at the Catholic side. And
Oh,
although all of these priests are getting busted for being pedophiles and molestation, Catholic is still good no matter what. Because it's in the eyes of God. Why is it so unbalanced?
and I mean, the thing is, you see it's coming out in so many different religious groups. I mean, not just the Catholic Church; they were like the big ones where it really got cracked open. But then you also have seen other smaller groups, other religious groups, and everything. And it's one of those where it honestly sometimes it feels sad to me, because you're looking at these people who are supposed to be spiritual leaders, who are supposed to be someone you should be able to trust and turn to and talk to, and not fear what could happen. And all this coming out, it's just like, it's just sad that these are supposed to be people who hold such big responsibility in their group, and they are betraying them and causing this much pain. But
Somebody
they're
on
claiming, oh, it's not me, it's this.
someone named Macho, I want to get your opinion on this because I don't agree with it. And once again, this is talking about, I don't know if you're not listening to the whole stream we've been doing, talking about there's different branches of Satanism. But Macho said it does have to do with death and bloodletting. Shake my head. So clearly, this person's mad at me, saying it's a part of our magic. And I have to be honest, I've known Satanists and that they don't do any of that. So, I mean, if that's what you do, that's brave of you to admit it on the channel. But that's not the people that I've known that have been a part of the Church of Satan. So I'm sorry I'm not on the same page as you. How do you feel about it, Elfie?
Honestly, it's one of those, that might be like a much smaller group that might not even be affiliated with the church. Like the Church of Satan and the big organizations that are established, like, as far as I know, disavow that. There could be little groups that are calling themselves Church of Satan, or organizations that are satanic, that do bloodletting, do that stuff, but the official organizations do not. So I'm not sure what they are talking about. Like, their group may do that, but the group that we're talking about does not.
Well, that's the fear, too, that I'm trying to take out of it here. And obviously, like, it's not working, but that's okay. But it's that saying that all Satanists practice it this way.
Yeah,
That's what we're
no.
trying to say is not, you cannot distinguish an entire group of people doing
Mhm.
bloodletting or whatever you're talking about, and dark magic, whatever. I'm not talking about that. I'm not saying all. I'm
I mean,
saying
it's all,
some can, absolutely. We've just been talking
yeah.
about that with the balance, is that some do, some don't. But I think majority public, what I've learned and who I've met, don't.
I mean, there are people that are self-proclaimed Satanists that do bloodletting, do blood magic, do rituals, but it's like one of those. you have to actually talk to, like, okay, are you Church of Satan? Do you believe in an actual devil, or is it just an archetype? It's not a quick and fast, you are this, or
Is
I
it a
am this, and
DD?
whatnot.
Yeah, exactly. Like there's layers to it, which we don't have time for it today. Because Elfie, if you look on her shelf, she's Miss Research Thing. Like literally, when we need information, Elfie's like, I've got it all ready to go right now. Like literally.
Maybe, I guess.
Yeah, literally. So going into other ones, like when you talked about paganism earlier, what's the belief side of, because you grew up in a pagan household, right?
Yeah.
So talk a little bit about the belief system of that, just to distinguish the difference.
Well,
And there's
okay,
branches of that again too, right? Like, I mean, literally, that's what every belief system is.
well, the kind of, okay, so the problem is usually if you talk to various pagans, they have their own definition, but the general consensus usually is paganism is the umbrella term that you're using to describe a alternative religion that does not follow under the mainstream religions such as Christianity, Islam, Judaism, sometimes even Buddhism and stuff. So it's sometimes it could be an earth-based religion, sometimes it's more philosophy. So it's one of those, like, even if you talk to a bunch of different pagans, they will have different answers to how they personally practice it and everything. So it's one of those, not a definite, similar to Satanism, is not a quick one and done and this is the absolute answer. But that's kind of the idea. It's this umbrella term for a practice that does not usually follow the mainstream religions that we know of.
Right.
And for me personally, it was kind of a very loose space where it was like, yeah, there was like kind of nature and there was ritual work, and there's the belief, I grew up with the belief of various deities and such, but I always so I was very bad pagan, where I didn't follow the holidays as closely, because some pagans follow the idea of the 8 holidays with the Sabbaths and the quarters and everything. My family did not really. Halloween was definitely the thing, though. We made sure we celebrated Halloween, please.
Yes, that's like the best part, right? Oh my gosh. Do you consider yourself pagan, or did you?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I mean, it was one of those things where it was this kind of, I grew up when I didn't think really much about it until I was older and interacting with other people and everything. Is one of those, which I find interesting, when I started socializing with, like, going to pagan groups and such, like Wiccan groups and whatnot, and a lot of them would be people who came from like Christian backgrounds and such, who found paganism through like teen years or early 20s and such. And so it was always interesting where I would talk to them, like how they found it, either through books or even like role play, or just reading fantasies, or just like interacting with other energy workers and stuff. And whereas for me, it was just a day-to-day thing. It was just, yep, this is my life.
This is my life, yeah. And it's just like, okay, but once again, distinguishing the difference in the belief systems is what's so important. You know what I mean? And like taking the fear out of it.
Oh, yeah. And it's been, in some ways, it has probably been oversimplified over years in the media. I mean, most people think paganism is all Wiccan, which is not the case. Not all witches are Wiccan, not all Wiccans are witches, and not all of them are pagan to begin with.
Right. And it's so deep. Is that where you got your love for research too?
Partially, yeah. I mean, I've always enjoyed reading books, but I also started really diving deeper into reading about where these beliefs came from, because a lot of the pagan practices you see, especially if you go through the like Garderian and the Wiccan and such, a lot of it was more pulled from folk magic and early 20th century, like Golden Dawn and Thelema and ceremonial magic, and then kind of trickled down into more of a earth base and everything.
I love it. I like the earth stuff.
So
probably my Taurus self coming out. You know what I mean?
Don't down those rabbit holes.
Yeah,
never came out.
You're like, don't do it. Well, is there anything else we want to add? I feel like that was a pretty good stream. I just want to add, there's one more thing I want to add. This guy that came on, I had to block him on YouTube because he was, like, being ridiculous. Those are the kind of Satanists I don't get along with, because they're trying to, like, force it down your throat and make you believe a certain way. But isn't that with every religion, once again?
Like,
Those people exist everywhere, and you can't say all do this. And then the fear-based and scare tactics, I hate it. I hate it, and I won't deal with it. I won't deal with it.
Mm-hmm.
So my crew blocked it. Block.
I mean, some of the humor, I mean, I think some of this came out late. I mean, there's the Lil Nas X music video, and apparently everyone lost their collective mind when they saw that.
Oh my god, the blood shoes and all that. I don't, that we're not talking about, because that's a whole other problem. I don't know about any of that, you know what I'm saying? But that was a hot mess, you know what I'm saying? But yeah, so another thing I think I'd like to add at the end was from my friends that they're no longer a part of the Church of Satan. They were a part of the Church of Satan. And I just feel like I was kind of like a sponge, like soaking in some of the stuff that they had talked to me about, you know? But one other thing they said was, and I haven't done research on it, by the way, but Enochian, my one friend, Steven, said that a lot of the scripture that was taken by Anton LaVey was in reference to an Egyptian culture called Enochian. So essentially it was this Egyptian, Enochian religious base, which once again, I can't speak on it because I haven't done enough research on it. But basically there's some ex-Satanists that claim Anton LaVey basically like ripped off the entire Enochian culture and literally created Satanism by like slapping the devil face on it. So I don't know, you'd have to do your own research if we ever did a stream with that. I've looked it up a little bit, and like the first thing that pops up when you talk about like Satanism, Enochian, is like accusing Anton LaVey of ripping it off. So it's clearly been like a thing. But you know, you think back to the 60s when Anton LaVey did create it. It was like, what did you say, 1966? Is that right?
Yeah.
Amazon did not exist then, and the internet did not exist then. Like, you can't just Google to find that. So it is possible he found that other scripture and had inspiration behind it. Once again, saying he is a theatrical performer, absolutely, and being able to like take that and interpret it in a different way.
Oh yeah, that, and you also have to think too, it's like in the 1960s, not only did you have the hippie era going on, but you had a rebirth of occult interest, of witchcraft interest. I mean, Crowley was being republished again, and so you have this all these fascinating alternative fringe practices. So there was a lot of material he probably could, and it's San Francisco. I mean, he probably had access to more stuff than we think.
True.
You know, didn't have the internet and whatnot. I mean, it didn't come out of a void.
Right. No, I agree. I agree on that statement. And going back to like dealing with what we just dealt with on here, we had this sort of Satanists of stature coming in saying everybody does bloodletting and sacrifices. Don't let people scare you. You know, if you're ever out there and you're talking with somebody and you happen to run across somebody like we just dealt with on the stream that's like, oh yeah, we all sacrifice and do bloodletting, and that's what that's the kind of Satanists I don't get along with, because I don't like when they feed into power. They like that fear and that power of taking, like, I'm gonna say everything to like scare you. Don't react, because that's what they want you to do. You know what I mean? Like, they want you to fight and react and just ignore them and like walk away, because I think most of the time they're just like blowhards or like, you know, little man syndrome, and they have to like feel important. I just want to give that clue to you guys of like, if you ever deal with it like we just did, don't panic. Like, don't, like, they want you to panic. It's a shock factor, and just breathe, because it is an icky energy, and it also shows, I feel like, levels of vibrations, like where you're vibrating at, and like you don't want to deal with low level vibrational people, even if it's just words. Yeah, you know what I mean? Even if it's like words for the shock factor. Because I feel like there's education to be learned with all of this, and that's really the point of some of these weird topics I come up with, like the Church of Satan, is educate yourself, and like really educate yourself. Don't just make guesses. Don't just read one article. Like, really, like I always say, like, critical thinking, I feel like, is so important with all of these occult topics being in paranormal, and taking the fear out of it's so important to me, because I mean, Elfie, how many people have told you, like, if you practice witchcraft or if you're into paranormal, like, you're gonna go to hell?
Oh, quite a few. they were like, "Oh, I'm going to pray for you." I'm like, "You do that." Have
Please do, boo. Like, please, I'm gonna pray for you to get some like freedom from your religion as well. You know
fun.
what I mean?
Well, I mean, also like your friends you were telling them who were former Satanists and everything, and then I have friends who are still in the church and whatnot. That they're very reasonable. If you ask them like reasonable questions and want to know and not like be an ass about it, they're happy to talk about it.
Right. Yeah. It's
As
true.
long as you are respectful and everything, they're fine with it. They're not going to be like, "Ooh."
No, the woo stuff is exactly the people that I think are just fraudulent, honestly.
Oh yeah.
And I've talked about dealing with a few of those at the museum here in Vegas, and I don't like that. I don't like people that try to scare people with any. It doesn't matter, even with Catholicism. I don't like anybody trying to scare other people with religion. I don't like that at all, because I think we are all free thinkers and we should all be able to practice or believe, once again, within reason, of not harming yourself or other people. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
so it's an interesting topic. So just be open-minded and educate yourself and critically think, you know, and like try not to let, you know, society influence you on like, you know, making your brain just like go to that place of like it's automatically bad. Same with witchcraft, you know, like I've practiced spell work. Does that mean that I've done black magic? Well, technically black magic's if you get, you know, in your vehicle and somebody cuts you off and you call them an asshole, that was black magic. So I think we've all probably practiced that once or twice, you know what I mean? But if you don't educate your Elfie's like, oh,
Like, I'm going to curse off you.
well, it's true, but like, and like even things as little as incorporating things, like people don't realize, like, do you have a lucky charm on your like keyring? That's witchcraft.
Or even like a lucky t-shirt, like this is a t-shirt I wear when my team plays so they win. It's like, that's a charm.
Do you blow out candles on your birthday, or have you ever? Guess what? That's witchcraft. Have you, what's another, there's more examples. Have you ever found a penny on the ground and thought it was like a sign in good luck? That's witchcraft. Like, but like, it shouldn't be scared. You know what? Like, it's just crazy what society's done to our brains. And I it's part of the journey of Ghost Girl Diaries is I like to like unfuck that here. Because people don't realize how common it actually is. Do you put up a Christmas tree? Guess what? You're pagan. That's a shocker. That scares people when I say that. They're like, like, you know what I mean? Like, oh my god.
Like,
No,
that's a pagan tradition right there, and then you have the little nativity scene right underneath it.
No, it like literally, like, and if people only realize, if you really studied paganism, that so many of our holidays and belief systems on Christianity was all based off of paganism beliefs.
Oh yeah, it's like such an amalgamation of like you have this. I mean, the thing is, it's like you have Christianity came in and they converted people and they built their churches. It's like it's not going to be sudden like people are like, oh, I guess we're going to stop doing our holidays now, like full tilt. It's like it gets blended in and everything.
Well, and we were even having this light discussion earlier too, which I'd love to chat about that for 2 seconds before we end the stream. But I watched this documentary. I watched several documentaries yesterday. It was like my first day off in a few weeks, and so I binged a little bit. But you know, the very first texts of like the Bible or belief systems were Sumerian beliefs, right? And the Sumerian scriptures. So we're talking like obviously Judaism, or not Judaism, Israel area, and like Iraq, Afghanistan, Mesopotamia, like that's like the old areas of the world, right? And essentially these original scriptures, they were written on stone, obviously, because they're so old. They have now gone missing, by the way, but they have been reinterpreted like thousands of times. But the problem is not everybody can interpret them, because obviously you can't speak the language of that time or of the current time. So what had happened was they basically reinterpreted these ancient scripts and turned them into all the versions of the Bible that we know today. And essentially what they were saying in some of these documentaries was a lot of the factual information in the scriptures was wiped. And it was wiped, and that's what has also created for women to just be procreators, and we've basically been fighting to get back into where we need to be as women in society. And we've always gotten underpaid and like, oh, she's the housewife that bears the children. And they're saying it's because it all started with the scripture being misinterpreted. And that was just really fascinating to me. So that tells you how powerful words are. that thousands of years later, people in societies will still believe the scripture, and it wasn't even the real accurate scripture, and it was broken off into all of these religions. And before, they're saying the scripture was, there was women of goddesses that were running, you know, lands and countries, and they were powerful. And it's just amazing. It's amazing how powerful words are, is really how I'd like to end the stream. And that's why we're afraid of Satanists. And that guy was proof. You know what I mean? I don't like him. I don't like Satanists like that. You know what I mean? So
Also, it's like, how are you going to win this argument when you come out the gate like, you're wrong and this like blah? It's like, yeah, that's not going to help.
no. Well, and look, don't question Elfie, okay? Because she researches, she eats, breathes, and sleeps the research, okay, guys? You know what I'm saying? Like, that's like her thing. So just, and like you said, you have friends in the church, and I have too, and it's, they're not lying to me about doing bloodletting. Like, oh, then they're not a real Satanist. Okay, remember, let's go back to me saying you could just be a shitty person. You know what I mean? Like, literally. Yeah, you know? So anyway, thank you guys so much for our streams. Or anything you want to add, Elfie, to our hilarious chat there?
I think we're good.
Oh my gosh. Well, thank you so much for being on. Thank you guys so much for being with us here on Friday night. Make sure you're following us on social media. Next week, I think Kat and I think we're doing, is it like an Egyptian or an Atlantis chat? I can't remember. Anyway, that'll be a cool one. And
Either one sounds great.
yeah. Oh, Kat. Oh my God. Kat loves her. Like, she thinks she lived past lives with Egypt. Like, she's obsessed. And I love my, like, Lemuria, Atlantis stuff. So, anyway, make sure you guys are following us on social media. This will be uploaded as a podcast and a separate video on YouTube. And as always, we will catch you guys next time. Bye, guys. Thank you.